Hey guys, Luton here, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the upcoming Jets DLC, which is currently available in the dev build of ARMA 3. Now, this provides us with 3 new aircraft for the base game, as well as 1 new stealth drone variant. It also improves the sensor system on planes, as well as altering the way you take damage. Planes are now affected similarly to helicopters, in that damage can actually affect your ability to maintain control. Previously, you may lose fuel if your tank on board took a hit, but beyond that the plane would operate as normal. Now damage can affect your literal control, making landing to repair very challenging. Jets DLC also gives us a dynamic loadout or pylon system, something that's been available in community mods for some time now. This is a welcome change that gives new life and roles to existing vanilla jet models like the Buzzard, Nephran and A164. The 3 new aircraft are the NATO FA-181 Black Wasp II, a design inspired by combining the F-18 and F-22. It's designed to be used in conjunction with the USS Freedom, the carrier model soon to be implemented into ARMA. It features folding wingtips for carrier storage and a tail hook for landing. There are 2 variants available, stealth and conventional. I so far haven't been able to differentiate any operational difference between these 2 other than the fact that the standard model has visible weapon systems. But this is still dev build, so maybe some stealth coating for the jet to make locking on more difficult is yet to come. CSAT have the TO-201 Shikra, inspired by the T-50 PAC and Su-35. It's a much larger aircraft carrying internal missile and bomb bays, as well as standard wing pylons for loadout. The AAF have a new pocket-sized jet to go with the Buzzard, the A149 Griffin, inspired from the JAS-39 Gripen. It's a fast jet and carries the same nimble manoeuvring as the Buzzard, but it's got limited loadout capability, again as with the Buzzard due to its small frame. The last addition is the UCAV Sentinel, which I'll look at in a separate video. This is the first jet drone in ARMA 3, and it's apparently stealth capable. I'll just mention that also in the Jets DLC we're going to be soon seeing the USS Freedom. This is not currently in the dev build. It's a full-size carrier capable of launching and recovering aircraft. Hopefully it will be compatible with modded jets designed for carrier launch as well as those in the Jets DLC. It's a welcome addition though, as the previous modded carrier was not especially practical when it came to Zeus operations, or indeed any operations. So we're getting a little showcase here of the jets, and I've put the vanilla existing models down like the A164 and the Nephran already for you to check out. That's the stealth variant of the Wasp, and this is the standard loadout version. As you can see, barely any difference other than it's actually got the loadout. I wanted to compare the sizes here so you can just get an idea. Now look at the Buzzard and the Griffin, quite small as as they already are. The Nephran was always around about the same size, you can see there, but look at the size of the Shikra. It's way bigger. It's absolutely huge compared to the Nephran. Then we got up the A164, and again you can see the A164 and the Nephran about roughly the same size, although very different shape and design. And then we've got the Wasps, the 2 which are based around those kind of F-18, F-22 inspirations, and again you can see a little bit larger. But the Shikra is the standout, again very much like kind of the Su-35, much bigger, really huge. So now we can see some first start off of the Wasp and some operations here. So I started flying around some AI models, and I wanted to just test out, look at its maneuverability, how it's carrying itself around the landscape, and the Wasp is pretty sexy. It looks really nice, and again you can imagine this when we've got 2 or 3 of these in the air launching from carrier. There could be some really cool strike stuff going on. So I put some units down on the ground, and I wanted to see basically how this guy was going to engage, what loadout it was going to use for what it has available. So you can see I've just got some small technical motorized infantry CSAT guys on the ground here, and it's just using those air-to-ground missiles to knock that out. And it's of course got the standard cannon on board as well. Now coming to the cockpit view now, you can see that there's basically not really any heads-up display for the Wasp. This means there's no reticule, there's no way of actually spotting onto your target and lining up those things. The air-to-ground missiles are a standard system, so that's just absolutely standard. You can see when I'm bringing in this Gatling cannon right here, you basically have to put some firing shots. Once you've obviously got used to it, it would have been a really nice addition if they'd had some kind of like heads-up display for the pilot. Maybe that's something which is coming in, I don't know. I would imagine that maybe that's some element which hasn't been put in there. You'll get used to it. If not, you'll be able to utilize it if they don't put that in there. But seeing as all the other aircraft have that available to them, it's a little curious. Maybe I've missed this. Maybe it's something which is already in there and I just didn't know how to turn it on, but I couldn't find anything for that. So it's one of those things. Maybe that's a work in progress. We'll have a look as well well at the Griffin later, because that's actually a kind of, you know, a slightly contrasting problem, where it actually does have a heads-up display. It does have like a little visor screen for you to aim your shots onto, but it's actually quite obtrusive. It actually prevents you from actually seeing what you're firing at, which is a big problem. Now, an interesting issue was that I put down here, right here, these guys are an AA team. Now, they were very ineffective versus the Wasp, so I wanted to actually check this out for myself. Now, firing ground-to-air missiles versus you know, jets or whatever. Helicopters, different because they're a bit slower, but jets, it's always very difficult to get them to be especially effective. That's why you often need like 1 or 2 guys to fire a couple of missiles simultaneously. Now, this is actually versus the stealth variant Wasp, because I wanted to test, was there any difference with locking on when you're trying to lock? Is there a big problem? You can see that it's obviously kind of like, you know, just selecting, but there's no real issue in terms of lock-on. I didn't notice any difference between this and the other jets from ground-to-air lock-on. There we go, missile away, no problem. So whether there is an increased time delay there, I wasn't able to see that. Maybe there's some kind of change-up that they're going to actually have with the stealth variant, but other than just, you know, not having weapons available actually on the model, that was the only difference I could really see there, so it's kind of interesting. But I did note that it seemed way easier than in the past to avoid missiles, incoming missiles. Now, you'll see here, often when you would have an incoming missile, you pop those flares, it would be a bit hit or miss whether or not you're actually going to take damage. You know, if you get 2 missiles coming in on you, chances are usually in the past maybe 1 was going to hit you. Now right here you can see I've got my AA team on the ground and I'm just Zeus controlling this jet as we fly in. But watch what happens here. It's got missiles coming in onto it, flares those first ones, so this is like 1 missile away. As I come in, there's a missile already just being denied. I'm popping those flares, I turn away, but look, really no evasive maneuvers at all. I make some very lackluster turns, like I'm just like, yeah, missile, whatever. So you can see that the missiles seem extremely, you know, ineffective, as opposed to previously they could be more challenging. Okay, so now we've got the Shikra, and this, I put down 2 Shikra and some light technicals again to see how they engage, but the standard Shikra loadout again seems fairly anti-aircraft orientated. Now you can obviously change up these loadouts because there is a dynamic loadout system which we'll look at shortly, but the base model seems more AA orientated, not CAS orientated. So the guys that are flying in onto these technicals here, they don't really sort of engage especially well. They just lay down some pretty base cannon fire onto the units on the ground, and you can see just from 3 technicals, these jets take an absolute caning actually. And the interesting thing with this was that this jet that's being fired on right now, I take control of and just fly back. I just wanted to see what the cannon looks like on this jet, and we'll have a look at that in a sec. But you can see that it's already taken some damage. And interestingly, you know how you'd always used to take some damage previously on the jets, and you'd usually get like a twin tail of smoke. You know, from both engines you'd have smoke pouring out once you'd taken some hull damage or whatever. Well, now you can see it's actually coming out from one engine, and this is part of that adjustment, that change to the damage system for jets. So now you can take kind of damage and it sort of affects one side or the other, and then that actually affects your mobility, it actually affects your control of the jet. So you'll start to roll involuntarily to one side or the other, and again the jet is always trying to constantly roll, and you'll see that in a minute. So right now my roll is constantly, it's fighting with me. I'm having to battle to keep the plane sort of level at all. I quite like the vanilla sound for the cannon on this one, but you know, it's much of a muchness. If you're using a sound mod anyway, it's probably going to get changed up in the future. But you know, it beats some of the tic-tac sounds we had for the Buzzard, right? But anyway, okay, so you can see right here, this is, I'm trying to get back to base, and I wanted to test how easy was it going to be to land, and I'm just sort of checking my position here. Okay, now you can see, look, the jet is constantly trying to roll to the left. I'm having to fight it constantly, so I'm actually holding the jet sort of, I'm pushing it harder to the right plane to try and sort of like balance it out. So right now when you're flying around in the air, okay, whatever, it's not too bad, but it's very much like in a helicopter when you have a damaged tail rotor and you're having to fight against that because the helicopter's spinning out of control. It's kind of like that, you know, the jet feels like it's spinning out of control all the time. Now look, I haven't even come up on a straight approach here onto the runway, so let's see if I can actually make this down. And again, kind of the slower you are, the worse it gets. If you're going pretty fast, you can kind of handle it not too bad. This is a change-up that I do like. You can see on the heads-up display, it actually has the runway highlighted in the heads-up display, and that's something that's new. That's quite nice because, again, if you're flying at night or whatever, I mean, you know, it's just something which adds to it. On the other hand, it does actually clutter up the HUD a little bit more. Now you can see, I'm having a really hard time here, keeping this level really difficult. and I managed to just kind of come in and hold it and slow it down. But that wasn't easy. That was not an easy landing whatsoever. And you know, you can imagine that depending on the damage and how you're coming in and the length of runway and the aircraft that you can have all sorts of problems. And I got kind of lucky there. I was very lucky. That could have very easily gone bad for me. Okay, so next up we got the AAF's A149 Griffin, and again put some light technicals down on this beach. Now again, this model, it's got a fairly AA loadout as the base loadout. So of course it's dynamic loadout, so you're going to be able to change that up, no problem, but the base loadout seems very AA orientated, and I just left these with the base loadout. We'll check out the loadout system in a mo. But this guy, again, the AI seems pretty lackluster. He's not especially concerned with destroying those technicals by the look of it. Fired about 10 rounds there from what I could see, and you have a very, very limited amount of ammunition with this. Again, you've got these maces, but that one says AG, but it's definitely an AA round, which I found kind of weird. Now look at the HUD. Look at the HUD here. You can't see anything through that HUD. Once you've got like the horizon up like this, you can see not too bad, but when you're actually trying to look down onto targets, it's really, really hard. Really, really difficult. So because this is so kind of AA orientated, I thought, okay, so let's put some shikras in the air and let's see how I can handle this. So I'm getting in on these guys, straight up locking these guys. Are these shikras or are these Nephrans? I can't remember. But anyway, just firing off some AA short-range missiles. Now I was kind of surprised because often when you fire those AA short-range missiles, they just kind of fly straight to the target. But you could see I totally missed with those. So I was trying to kind of lead the shot a little bit more, but look how easily it's avoiding the flares. So that's like, there we go, missed again. So that's 4 missiles I put away on that guy. Didn't hit him at all. So I was kind of surprised with that, because often that'd be very, very easy to take those down if you're running like an AA jet aircraft. Now again, the Gatling cannon was something which I was not greatly impressed with on the Griffin. I actually found that the positioning of it, and it seemed really off to me. I was not comfortable at all with where the cannon lead and position was on the Griffin, and it felt really off-centered to me. You can see I did manage to just pop off an AA missile and shoot those guys down, but the positioning of the gun, the cannon, it felt so off on the Griffin. I felt really kind of like, I was like, was this me? Have I just sucked at shooting and I haven't kind of, you know, taken on a jet roll for a while? Again, look right here, I was trying to sort of get around on this guy, and I was like, I must be able to get at least a few shots on this guy, you know, really. But I think a combination of the HUD and the weird kind of lead, the weird kind of positioning of the main cannon just made it really, really horrible to shoot with this thing, and much more difficult than, say, with the Buzzard or the A164. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, I really, really need to check this out and see, is this me, or is it just the weird positioning of the gun on this thing? So I loaded in an A164, and we'll see in a minute that I tried to take on another jet with the A164, because when I used to play on INA, I used to very, very often fly close air support or anti-air, and just flying around and just keeping control of the situation. I was determined to like get something on this guy, and there we go, you can see, did manage to get an AA missile onto that guy. So I took on the A164, and I put again just another enemy jet down, and I was like, okay, I don't want to shoot this guy down with the AA, I want to get guns on him, because very often when you're playing INA, you fly around with a CAS support, and your main objective, your main role is to, you know, keep the airspace under control for the ground units so that the pilots can fly in and out and constantly transport people without fear of being continually shot down. So there's an AA guy. Now an interesting thing was obviously those new, there we go, missile coming in, but look how easily I avoid it. Just flare one time, barely even had to evade it. That does seem a change to me. Again, like that missile coming straight in on me, just flare, no problem. Didn't really feel like under pressure to flare at all. But yeah, these guys don't have, the older jets don't seem to have the radar system implemented, so we just got sensors, so you can see I'm not actually seeing the enemy jet, so I had to kind of visually get onto it right here, and I spot the guy over in this direction, so I track, get onto him. I'm just using the Gatling cannon. Now it seems like I fire a lot, but I only fire 100 rounds. I'm just trying to estimate the lead on the jet, and with the third burst I get him. So you can see that was pretty straightforward, and I only used 100 rounds. Now the Griffin, I think, is like the Buzzard, carrying about 150 rounds. Now with those, if you had a little bit more accuracy, and because it's a slightly slower firing weapon on the Griffin with the cannon there, you should be able to pick onto those targets, but I was having an incredibly challenging time, and I think part of it is that HUD, and part of it is just the weapon and its positioning. Found it incredibly easy with the A164, just bam, shot him down straight away, didn't feel any challenge, any pressure whatsoever, and I was pretty close to the target, but I was about the same distance away as I was with the Griffin, and it was just literally night and day in terms of how easy that was for me. And the A164 is still an absolute beast in the air. This thing is the business. Okay, so now let's take a look at the loadout system. Now this is not actually available currently sort of live in game, but it is available in the editor. So if you look in the editor, I was just checking out some other stuff here. You can see the electronic sensors you can change up in the editor. So here is the object pylon settings. So this is the loadout system. Now a kind of cool feature as well is that you can mirror this, and mirroring, you can see that little checkbox in the top right. The mirror option basically means that when you load one wing, it will replicate that onto the other wing. That's a really good thing because it means it saves you having to go down through and check every single box in terms of loadout, but you have the option to do both. So if you wanted to have kind of like an odd loadout from one wing to the other, you can do that. Now usually with these systems on each individual pylon, you can't just put any weapon. So usually the more central ones, those are going to be used for bombs. The more middle ones are going to be used for different missile pod systems, rocket pods or missiles, air to ground. And then the extreme ones on the far edge of the wing, they're usually going to be anti-aircraft. But you can kind of load it totally however you want to. So you could, for example, just have the AAs on either side, then a full bank of rocket pods. You could load it up completely with bombs. You could load it up completely with air-to-ground missiles, so you can really build a loadout specifically on, you know, what role you want that aircraft to play. Now there is a pretty exciting thing for me in this, is that it basically gives extra functionality to the vanilla jets that we already have. So the A164, it was already very, very heavily armed, but you could load it up completely with air-to-ground missiles or completely with bombs. Same with the Nefran, same with the Buzzard. Now the Buzzard obviously has a slightly lighter loadout already, but it is pretty exciting because I always liked the Buzzard. It might surprise you. I really always enjoyed the Buzzard. I enjoyed its maneuverability, I enjoyed how kind of lightweight it was, and also when you're playing something like ANA, the Buzzard's really good for balance because it doesn't have a ridiculously overpowered loadout like the A164. So for kind of multiplayer situations, it provides some air support without being totally overpowered. It means it doesn't take away from the guys on the ground and what they're doing. So the Jets DLC so far is looking pretty awesome. I think many people are thinking, oh, Jets DLC, we're just getting a couple of new jets, what's so exciting about that? Well, it's actually a lot more than that, and I'm actually pleased that it's a lot more than that. It would have been a bit, you know, uninspiring if it was just a couple of new extra jets, because hey, we have that all the time in modded already. But they're giving us an aircraft carrier, a new drone, a revised sensor system, a new damage system. The flares and stuff, like I say, feel a little bit different in how they operate. There's a whole new load of stuff, and of course the pylon loadout system, which is a really, really big deal. And again, I hope that that will carry over and be able to be utilized with mods as well. I'll just finish up by saying again about the USS Freedom, I very much hope that that kind of is going to be sort of compatible again with mods, because that's really, I'm sure, what people are going to want to see. It's going to be very, very exciting to see how the USS Freedom plays out, not just from a jet's perspective, but also whether it enables more amphibious operations, whether we can drop boats down, helicopter launches off of there. Is it going to have an internal loading system for aircraft and all that kind of stuff? So it'll be really exciting to see kind of future development of this, and I'll try and keep on top of it for you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Tell me what you think of this Jets DLC down in the notes below, and I'll see you next time.